Sheila, you are actually our mentor, club mentor, is that correct?
That is correct.
And she has certainly given us a lot of pointers in her role as a club mentor. Please help me welcome Attorney Sheila. No.
Thank you. So this will be the last lecture portion of the evaluation program. Yay! Does anybody remember what the acronym MEME means? Uh-oh, now we're in trouble. So, when the acronym MEME is when you're the speaker and how you can help get yourself a really good evaluation. So who's a factor in that? Me, myself, because I want to be prepared to help everyone else give me a good evaluation. So the first M in MEME is me. Second is my evaluator. So I want to come prepared to tell my evaluator what I want my evaluator to evaluate me for. If I'm working, now if you're working through your regular manual, this is pre-planned because the basic manual is progressive skills and it will tell you this is the body language speech. When you get into more advanced speeches or you're working on a contest speech or you're working on a speech you plan to give somewhere else. We're allowed to give our speeches elsewhere. In fact, that's kind of cool. So if you have a speech you want to practice in your Toastmasters meeting, tell everyone what you want them to evaluate you for. So you've got me, you've got your evaluator, now you have your mentor, and this might be your formal mentor that was assigned to you by the club or that you have an agreement with or chose, or you might ask someone to mentor you for a specific speech. Now why might you do that? Because you can see members of your club who might have a specific skill you're really good at. So you want that person to mentor you through a specific speech. And then the last thing is everybody else. So when we write our introductions for our speech, put in your introduction what the purpose of the speech is. And I went last weekend and I visited one of my area clubs. This particular club happens to be located inside of a prison. And honestly, they had such a great Toastmasters meeting, I was embarrassed for the rest of us. And one thing they did that I thought was completely awesome is they have a big overhead behind them. And they have gone through every manual. So that's a total of 17 manuals. They wrote out the purpose of each speech, what the objectives are, and what you're supposed to be looking for when you're evaluating. So make sure you have that in your mind when you're getting ready to give your speech so you can help your evaluators do a good job. Now, I sent everyone this, and I know people probably don't have it, because unfortunately I didn't get to send it out until around lunchtime. But there's 14 pages of evaluation materials, most of which I cribbed from someone else. You can tell that because I gave them credit, I left their information on here. So everybody should have one of these in their email. My copy machine also took one back today. So these evaluation tools are long-form evaluation tools, and you can use them as worksheets. I don't necessarily recommend that you try to squeeze everything in one of these types of evaluations into a single evaluation because we only have 3 minutes and these are very long. But it is something that you can use if you're working on a contest speech or a speech you intend to use somewhere else, or to pick out something to talk about when you're evaluating someone else. And we all know I love acronyms, so we're going to start with the acronym GLOVE, G-L-O-V-E. And the first letter is G. That stands for gestures. This is really meant more so it can help us remember than just being restricted to gestures. But gestures is your cue for body language. So under this category, you're going to think about what is your speaker doing as far as their body language is concerned. Facial expression, does their facial expression match what they're talking about? Body movements, are they just flapping around like a crazy person, or are they doing something that looks like it's related to what they're talking about? And you will notice when you see some really advanced speakers that their movement on the stage is extremely purposeful. I've seen a diagram of someone that you know, it's X's and O's and running around. It looks like a football playbook because they planned out their speech to literally, when I say this word, I will be standing in this spot. And by the time I get to this word, I'm going to be over here. So watch for that if you see it when someone is being purposeful with their movement, or you need to let them know if it looks like they're just dancing with the podium and they don't really have any sort of a plan there, which is what I used to do because I'd be nervous. I have a little podium, so I'm just going to go, ooh, you're dancing, yay, it's so fun. Let someone know gracefully what's going on. So the L stands for language, word choice and usage, sentence structure, and grammar. You can almost always talk about language. Too many words, not enough words. How do you get too many words? Someone is just talking and talking and they're using 5,000 adjectives, and by the time they get to the end of the sentence, we forgot what we were talking about. Or they don't have any description at all. So they talk about a person, you have no idea about that person. You want to give a little bit of detail so we have some flavor. Organization. An evaluation is a little speech. So it should have a structure just like a speech you prepared. You want to give an introduction, you want to have a body, and you want to have a conclusion. Just pretend you're giving a tiny impromptu speech and make sure that your evaluation has some organization. The V stands for vocal variety. This is where you can talk to your speaker about their pitch. Is their voice monotonous, or do they use a range? Do they go up and down? Or are they falling off at the end of their sentence so you can't hear the very last thing that they say? These are the kinds of things that you can look for. Is there emotion in their words? Do they speak too fast? Do they speak too slow? Or are they talking over their laughs? Let them know. If the audience is still laughing, they should still be pausing. And it's hard for speakers sometimes to get that timing, so that is the kind of thing an evaluator is invaluable for. You talked over your laugh, or we didn't have time to really let that complicated sentence sink in before you went forward. Encourage your speakers to watch what's going on in the audience. You can usually tell if you lost your audience when they start looking around or giving you that quizzical look. And then the last is E, and that stands for enthusiasm. Is your speaker excited about what they're saying, or can you see nothing except how nervous they are? So you can write this on the top of your sheet, and like I said, you're probably not going to have a single solitary speech where you're going to talk about every one of these in the evaluation, but you probably can find one or two that you can hit on in any given speech, and they'll think you're brilliant because you've got something to say that has to do with making them a better speaker. So Glove works really well, it covers almost everything, and it is great to use if you're evaluating someone one-on-one, when you're mentoring someone, you're helping them with a speech, you're going to have more time to really look at each of the specific issues and provide them this really thorough evaluation. And there are some members that you don't get a little note from, you get a full sheet of paper and they do this for every single person that they're evaluating, and they hand it to you at the end of the meeting. Well, tool number 2 we're going to talk about tonight is the sandwich method. We talked about the mini sandwich as an evaluation method, but the sandwich is something that you can use to structure your evaluation. Now, why do we want to use the sandwich? The reason is it helps us make sure that we get the proper proportion of information to our speaker. You don't want to overwhelm the speaker with suggestions. You want to make sure that you're not only giving them suggestions, but you're encouraging them. So when you do the sandwich, you start with a positive comment. That's your bread. And then you put in there a suggestion for improvement. That's your meat. Or if you're a vegetarian, that's your veggies. And then another piece of bread, because you want positive, constructive, positive. And you can make a multi-layered sandwich. If you want to make a blimpie sandwich, you can make a blimpie sandwich. And you can put condiments on it. really specific suggestions or really specific comments about what someone is doing. Remember, the speaker can't see themselves. So if they're doing something weird with their face, they need to know that. We all have these weird quirks, we smack our lips, and sometimes these habits come out of nowhere. We gave 100 speeches, we never did that, and then one day something weird happens, and now we're going to do that every time until someone says, hey, why are you holding your face in that weird way? What is that all about? Now, if you want to get really complicated, you can take the glove and the sandwich and you can mash them together. And you can make a sandwich for each of the letters in glove. Positive, constructive criticism, positive. Positive, constructive criticism, positive. This gives you a really wonderful structure for your evaluation. If you're in a contest or something like that, you can write all of this information out and then pick what is really going to punch in that evaluation. And what did no one else in the group say? And that's the key. And that's one reason why if you get an opportunity to go to a club that has a round robin form of evaluation, even if you only go once, it's extremely illuminating, because what happens with a round robin evaluation is the speaker will give their speech, the evaluator will do their evaluation, and then you go around the room and ask each specific person in the room to provide a new piece of feedback that someone else hasn't already used. And then you get some really interesting feedback that's really deep, because by the time you get to share, if you started over here with Dr. Wally, Cher's going to have to work really hard to find something that somebody else hasn't already said. So you get some really deep down feedback out of your members by doing that. That works great for a contest. Sometimes it works really good for a beginning speaker. And if you have some time in the meeting, you're missing a speaker, you're missing an evaluator, try a round robin evaluation. It's really interesting. I think it's a huge learning experience. So the bonus information is your evaluation is a speech. It should be able to be broken down exactly like a speech. You want an introduction that is going to capture the audience's attention with some kind of an imaginative opening. You go to an evaluation contest and you'll see people up there giving a quote. Now, how do they know to do that? They've got a little library of quotes that they use all the time that apply in different evaluation situations, but it's so impressive because you're giving it an impromptu speech. And when you can start with an impromptu speech with a quote, awesome. Plus, there's so many positive quotes out there, and you can find 5 or 10 that are really going to be applicable to almost any speaking situation. So that's one of the things you can build in your little Toastmasters resources, a little group of quotes about good speeches and to help a speaker really, and that helps that speaker really remember your evaluation, and all of the other comments that you make in your evaluation are going to stick in that speaker's mind because now they're attached to that quote, and the next time they hear that quote, it brings back all of that information. So in the body of the speech, we want to start by pointing out what the purpose of that speech was. What was this speaker trying to accomplish? Because that puts your evaluation in focus and helps us understand why we're listening to this speaker. Make sure you always include praise. You never want to have an evaluation that doesn't include some positive things. In fact, it should really include more positive comments about the speaker and their speech than negative. Remember the sandwich: positive, suggestion, positive. Don't overwhelm your speaker with suggestions unless they're a more advanced speaker, but write down information that you think they might want to look at later. You don't have to give every single piece of information that you've written down on your oral evaluation for the entire group. And I encourage that you have things that maybe the speaker is going to be a little challenged to hear. Those are the things that you write down instead of talking about in front of everyone. These evaluations you give at your seat are, in my opinion, almost as important as your oral evaluation, and I encourage you to sign those for a couple of reasons. One, it gives the speaker a chance to come and talk to you afterwards if they don't understand your evaluation or they would like to know what your specific suggestions might be for fixing that particular issue. And when in the speech was I doing that? Did I do it the whole time or just for a minute? I think it also, when we sign our work, it helps us be a little nicer. If maybe we had just a tiny bit of meanness, if we have to sign our name and talk to the person afterwards, it reminds us that we should make sure we're being as constructive as possible. And then so you do this in your body, be as specific as you can with your suggestions, and emphasize the speaker's strengths as you move into the conclusion. And then you want to conclude with something that points out the value of the speech and indicate an appreciation for the opportunity and acknowledge that speaker in some way. This was a great first speech, or you've improved since your last speech. You don't need to say that you look forward to their next speech, because we hear that over and over and over again. So you want to try to avoid that. The other thing is you want to make sure you're personalizing your evaluation. You should never say, everybody has to do it this way, or you aren't doing it right. An evaluation is all about the speaker's opinion. Sometimes the speaker who is giving the evaluation is going to be wrong. It just happens. And you'll get a little collection of papers back from the group, and before long, you wouldn't be able to follow all of the advice you get if you wanted to, because one person will say, that was fantastic, I loved it when you waved your arms, and another person will say, what, are you spastic? Why were you waving your arms around like a crazy person? You have to choose for yourself which one of those to take. And so make sure when you're up here evaluating someone, you are making clear, this is my opinion. The person right next to me might disagree with the opinion, so don't get upset if you worked really hard on that section, I didn't like it, until you see what everybody else liked. And none of this is meant to be mean. This is meant to help people improve. I gave you another version of the glove technique just because it's kind of cool and interesting, and they give little worksheets that you can use. And in the back, I gave you some examples of the small sheets that certain clubs use. And the reason I gave you that is because you might want to consider doing this. I saw one Toastmasters group figured out their own little formula they wanted to use, and they made a rubber stamp. So they could just take the rubber stamp and make as many little organized sheets as they want to. This one on the one side is, I've passed out little pieces of this one before. This is the official Toastmasters butt slip. It's kind of cool because all of these little pieces tear apart, so at the beginning of the meeting you start with one slip. As you write on it, it tears apart, and at the end of the meeting, if you gave everyone feedback like you were supposed to and voted like you're supposed to, you don't have anything left. Some clubs use this, some clubs really like it. The only flaw it has for me is that it only gives you a tiny little bit of space to give feedback to all the speakers, and I like to write more information than that. So a lot of times I bring along my own sheet of paper so I can write additional things. This is what the Carrollwood Club uses. It's the love notes that we talked about before, where you talk about what you loved about the speech, what opportunities there are, what's valuable, what a valuable skill that person has, and what they've enhanced since their last speech. And in the corner, I gave you Lance Miller's cheat sheet for evaluation. If you ever have a chance to see Lance Miller, he's a former world champion of public speaking, and he loves these little postcards, and I love them on his behalf because they just give you just enough information to jog your memory later. They are separated. He shows you his little worksheets. You also have on the back here the 1-2 wow formula that we've talked about in the short form of evaluations, and this fantastic evaluation cheat sheet, which is a lot like the glove method in that you can use this to do a really thorough evaluation of someone's speeches. So if you didn't print this out yet, I do encourage you to print it out and save it. I also encourage you to get on the International Toastmasters website. There are a lot of cool tools that you can download that are free. One of those is Effective Evaluations, and it's about a 6-page guide that talks about some of the same materials I've covered. You can download it at any time for free, and there's some other nifty evaluation tools that are also available on the international website. Thank you for for your attention. Mr.
Thank you.